Please, please, sir, don't do this.
Her voice trembled as she sank to her knees, hands clasped in front of her chest. The concrete floor was cold and unforgiving beneath her. The man in the tailored suit stood in the doorway, his shadow stretching across the room. His eyes swept over the space. The thin mattress in the corner, the makeshift kitchen, the string of lights casting warm pools of light across bare concrete walls. "How long?" he asked, his voice low. "3 years," she whispered. "I've been here 3 years. 3 years, in my building." He stepped forward, his expensive shoes echoing in the empty space. "And you thought I'd never find out? I didn't think anyone cared about this place anymore." Tears spilled down her cheeks. The construction stopped. Nobody came. "I thought, you thought wrong. Please," her voice cracked. "I'll clean everything. I'll disappear. Just give me a few days to find somewhere else. I'm begging you." He stared down at her for what felt like an eternity. Then he did something she didn't expect. He crouched down, meeting her eyes. "Tell me your name." Rosalie Brennan." "Rosalie," he repeated slowly. "I'm Nathan Hayes, and I think you and I need to have a very long conversation. What happened next would change both their lives forever. But before we get there, you need to understand how a girl with everything lost it all, and how the lowest point of her life became the doorway to something she never saw coming. Welcome to Vicktale, where every story has a purpose, and every purpose has a lesson. If you're watching for the first time, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you believe in comeback stories. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to start over from nothing? Rosalie's story doesn't start with poverty. It doesn't start with struggle. It starts with love. 20-year-old Rosalie, who now works early morning shifts just to survive, was once a girl who had everything. She grew up in a suburb called Cedar Hills, just outside Portland, Oregon. Her father, James Brennan, built a commercial real estate company from the ground up. He'd started with a single property and turned it into a portfolio worth millions. Her mother, Anne, taught English at the local high school and filled their home with books, poetry, and warmth. Then there was Austin, her little brother, 12 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs, and convinced he'd discover a new species one day. "Rosie, did you know the Argentinosaurus was so big its footprints could fit a bathtub?" Austin would say at dinner, his eyes wide with excitement. "Nobody calls it Rosie except you, dork," she'd reply, but she'd be smiling. Their father would chuckle. "Son, maybe save the dinosaur facts until after we eat." Their mother would reach over and squeeze Rosalie's hand. "Let him talk. Passion is a beautiful thing." Those dinners, those ordinary beautiful moments, Rosalie would give anything to have them back. She'd been 17, a senior at Westview High School, when everything changed. She had a 3.8 GPA. She'd been accepted to Portland State University and the University of Oregon. She was debating between studying architecture like her dad or business management. She had friends. She had plans. She had a future. Until December 14th. Rosalie had been at her friend Michelle's house that night, studying for a chemistry final. Her family had driven to Hood River to visit her grandmother. Just a quick, overnight trip. "I'll see you tomorrow, sweetheart," her mother had said that morning, kissing her forehead. "Study hard, but not too hard." Her father had ruffled her hair. "Don't let Michelle distract you with those baking videos she's always watching." Austin had hugged her tight. "Bring me back something cool from the museum, okay? You're going to visit Grandma, not a museum, dummy." "Grandma lives near the dinosaur museum. Dad promised we'd stop." Those were the last words they'd ever say to each other. At 2:17 a.m., Rosalie was asleep on Michelle's couch, chemistry textbook open on her chest, when the doorbell rang. Michelle's mother, Mrs. Anderson, answered. Rosalie heard low voices. Then she heard her name. "Is there a Rosalie Brennan here?" Something in the tone made her sit up, made her heart start racing before her brain even understood why. Two police officers stood in the doorway, a man and a woman. Their faces were grave, their postures stiff. The female officer was holding her hat in her hands. That's when Rosalie knew. People don't ring doorbells at 2 a.m. with good news. Police officers don't remove their hats unless they're about to destroy someone's world. "Miss Brennan," the female officer said gently, "is there somewhere we can sit down?" "No." Rosalie stood up, her legs unsteady. "No, just tell me right now." The officer's eyes filled with sympathy. "There's been an accident on Interstate 84. A semi-truck jackknifed during the storm. Your father's vehicle—" The rest of the words blurred together. "Impact. Emergency services, transported to hospital. Did everything they could. 3 names, 3 family members. All gone." Rosalie's knees gave out. She heard herself screaming, a sound she didn't recognize, raw and animalistic. Mrs. Anderson caught her before she hit the floor. No, not all of them. Not all of them. But yes, all of them. Her father had died in the ambulance, fighting to hold on. Her mother died on impact. They said she didn't feel anything. Austin lasted 2 hours at the hospital before his injuries proved too severe. 17-year-old Rosalie Brennan became an orphan at 2:17 on a December morning, surrounded by chemistry notes and the smell of Mrs. Anderson's lavender candles. The funeral happened 4 days later. The funeral home was small, tastefully decorated with soft lighting and too many flowers. Rosalie sat in the front row, staring at 3 closed caskets lined up before her. Closed caskets, because the accident had been too violent for open ones. She wore a black dress Mrs. Anderson had bought her. She hadn't eaten in 3 days. She hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. She sat through the service in a fog, barely hearing the words. People approached her afterward with condolences that meant nothing. They're in a better place. At least they didn't suffer. You're so strong. She wasn't strong. She was hollow. A shell going through motions because she didn't know what else to do. Her father's brother, Robert, attended. He stood in the back with his wife, Patricia. Their 2 children, Madison and Tyler, flanking them. They didn't approach Rosalie during the service. They didn't hug her. They barely looked at her. After everyone left, after the funeral home staff started quietly cleaning up, Robert finally walked over. "Rosalie," he said stiffly, "Patricia and I will handle the estate matters. Don't worry about any of that. Just focus on processing." Processing, like grief was a transaction. "Thank you, Uncle Robert," she'd whispered, because what else was she supposed to say? "We'll be in touch," he said, and left. She should have known then, should have recognized the coldness in his tone, the calculation in his eyes. But she was 17 and drowning in grief. She wasn't thinking about money or property or legal matters. She was thinking about how she'd never hear her father's terrible jokes again, how her mother would never read poetry aloud in that voice that made even grocery lists sound beautiful, how Austin would never get to see another dinosaur exhibit. She was thinking about how utterly, completely alone she was. 3 days later, Robert came back. And this time, he brought a briefcase. Robert arrived at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. Rosalie was staying at the house. Her house, the only home she'd ever known. Mrs. Anderson had been checking on her daily, bringing food she didn't eat, sitting with her in silence, because what was there to say? The doorbell rang. Rosalie answered, expecting maybe another neighbor with a casserole or condolences. Instead, she found Robert. Patricia stood beside him, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. Behind them were Madison and Tyler, both looking uncomfortable. "Uncle Robert," Rosalie said, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming." "We need to talk," Robert said, brushing past her into the house. "Is anyone else here?" "No, I'm alone. Mrs. Anderson was here earlier, but—" "Good. This is family business." He walked straight to the dining room and set his briefcase on the table. The same table where her family had eaten their last dinner together before the trip. Patricia removed her sunglasses and looked around the house with an expression Rosalie couldn't quite read. Disapproval, assessment. "Sit down, Rosalie," Robert said. Madison and Tyler remained standing by the doorway, silent. Rosalie sat, her heart beginning to pound. Something felt wrong. Robert opened his briefcase with a sharp click. He pulled out folders, documents, papers with official-looking letterheads. "Your father's estate," he began, without preamble. "It's more complicated than you probably realize. The house, his business assets, investment accounts, savings. It's quite substantial." "I know Dad worked hard," Rosalie said quietly. "He built everything from nothing." "Yes, and now it needs to be managed properly." Robert spread papers across the table. "You're 17, a minor. You can't legally inherit property or manage financial accounts. The courts require an adult administrator." "Okay." Rosalie wasn't sure where this was going. "As your father's older brother and your closest adult male relative, that responsibility falls to me. I'm filing papers to become the administrator of the estate." "Administrator? What does that mean?" Patricia sighed impatiently. "It means your uncle will manage everything until you're old enough to handle it yourself." "But I turn 18 in 3 months." 18 is still too young," Robert interrupted. "These are complex financial matters. Properties, business holdings, investments. You don't have the experience or education to handle any of it." Something cold settled in Rosalie's stomach. "So, what happens?" "I liquidate the assets," Robert said matter-of-factly. "Sell the business, sell this house, consolidate the accounts. It's the most practical approach." "Sell the house?" Rosalie's voice rose. "This is my home. I grew up here. My parents—" "Your parents are dead." Patricia's voice was sharp. "This house is far too large for one teenager. It needs to be sold." "But where am I supposed to live?" Robert leaned back in his chair, her father's chair. "That's actually what we need to discuss. You can't stay here alone. You need a guardian, someone to provide for you." "Can't I stay with you?" Rosalie asked desperately. "Your family. I could live with you and Madison and Tyler until I finish high school." "Absolutely not," Patricia said immediately. "We have our own household to manage. We don't have room for another teenager." Madison shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Robert held up a hand. "Patricia, let me handle this." He turned back to Rosalie. "I've actually found a solution. A practical solution that benefits everyone." "What solution?" "Kenneth Hoffman. Do you know him?" Rosalie shook her head. "He's a business associate of mine. Very successful, owns a chain of car dealerships, very well respected. He's been widowed for 2 years now, and he's expressed interest in remarrying." The words hung in the air. Rosalie's brain refused to process them. I don't understand what that has to do with me." Robert smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "He's interested in you, Rosalie. I've discussed your situation with him, and he's willing to marry you. It's a practical arrangement. You'd have financial security, a home, stability. He'd have a young wife to help manage his household. The room tilted. You want me to marry your business partner? Kenneth is 63, Robert said, as if this explained everything. Mature, stable, established. You'd be taken care of. I'm 17 years old. You'll be 18 soon, Patricia added. It's not that unusual. My grandmother married at 16. That was a different time. Rosalie's voice cracked. This is insane. I don't even know this man. You'd get to know him, Robert said calmly. Kenneth is willing to wait a reasonable amount of time for courtship. A few weeks, perhaps a month. A month? Rosalie stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. My parents just died. I'm supposed to finish high school. I got into college. I have plans. With what money? Robert's voice turned cold. Everything your father had is now under my control. If you refuse this arrangement, you'll have nothing. No money for college, no place to live, nothing. You can't do that. Dad wouldn't have wanted. Your father isn't here, Robert snapped. I am, and I'm offering you a perfectly reasonable solution to your situation. Kenneth Hoffman is a good man. He'll provide for you. You'll have a comfortable life. Rosalie looked at Madison. Madison, please. Tell him this is crazy. We're family. Madison looked away, her jaw tight. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she said quietly, I can't go against my father, Rosalie. Tyler? Tyler shrugged uncomfortably. I mean, maybe it's not that bad. Kenneth's rich. You'd be set for life. Rosalie felt her world crumbling all over again. The accident had taken her family. Now, her uncle was taking everything else. I won't do it, she said, her voice shaking but firm. I won't marry some old man I don't know. You can't make me. Robert's expression turned to stone. You're right, I can't make you, but I also don't have to support you. You have 1 week to reconsider. And if I don't, then you leave this house. I'm not running a charity for stubborn teenagers. This is my house. No, Robert said, standing and snapping his briefcase shut. It's not. Not anymore. Your father's will left everything to your mother. She's dead. That means it defaults to next of kin. Me. Everything he built, everything he owned, it's mine now, legally. That can't be legal. There have to be protections for minor children, yes. Which is why I'm offering to take care of you, through marriage to Kenneth. If you refuse, you're choosing to forfeit that care. Robert headed for the door. 1 week, Rosalie. Think very carefully about your options. Patricia followed him, pausing only to say, You're being foolish. Kenneth Hoffman is your best chance at a decent life. Madison looked back at Rosalie, her eyes shining with tears she wouldn't let fall. I'm sorry, she whispered. Then she left too. Tyler was the last one out. For what it's worth, I think Dad's being harsh, but he's not going to change his mind. He never does. The door closed. Rosalie stood in the empty house, the house that was apparently no longer hers, and screamed until her voice gave out. Rosalie spent the next 7 days trying everything she could think of. She called her mother's sister in San Diego. Aunt Jennifer, please, I need help. Uncle Robert is trying to force me to marry this old man. Rosalie, I'm sure Robert has your best interests at heart. He's family. He's stealing everything Dad built. Can't I come stay with you? Just until I finish school. There was a long pause. Honey, I have 3 kids of my own. Money's tight. I just can't take on another person right now. I'm sorry. She tried her father's cousin in Seattle, her mother's brother in Arizona, a great-aunt in Sacramento. Every single relative gave her some version of the same answer. They couldn't help. Money was tight. Space was limited. Robert was her legal guardian now. She went to her school counselor, Miss Rodriguez. What your uncle is suggesting is technically legal if you consent after turning 18, Miss Rodriguez said carefully. But Rosalie, you have options. Foster care until you graduate. I'm almost 18. I'd age out immediately. Emancipation, perhaps? Don't I need to prove financial independence for that? Uncle Robert controls everything. Miss Rodriguez looked genuinely pained. I wish I could do more, but legally, until you're 18, your uncle has guardianship rights. After that, if he cuts you off financially, I don't know what to tell you. She tried looking up legal aid. Every attorney wanted money she didn't have for a consultation. Every website said the same thing. Minors have limited rights against legal guardians. She was trapped. On day 6, Kenneth Hoffman came to visit. Robert had called ahead. Kenneth would like to meet you properly. He'll be stopping by tomorrow afternoon. I suggest you make yourself presentable. When the doorbell rang at 2 p.m., Rosalie considered not answering. But what was the point? Robert would just let himself in anyway. Kenneth Hoffman stood on her porch, holding flowers. He was tall, heavy-set, with silver hair, slicked back, and cold grey eyes. He wore an expensive suit and cologne that was so strong it made her eyes water. "Rosalie," he said, his voice smooth. "It's lovely to finally meet you. May I come in?" She stepped aside, wordlessly. He walked into the living room like he owned it, looking around appraisingly. "Beautiful home. Your father had excellent taste." "What do you want?" Rosalie asked flatly. Kenneth sat on the couch without being invited. "Your uncle tells me you're hesitant about our arrangement. I thought perhaps we could talk, get to know each other. I'm not marrying you." Now. He smiled, and it made her skin crawl. "Don't be hasty. I understand this is all very sudden. You've suffered a terrible loss. But think practically, Rosalie. What are your alternatives?" "I'll figure something out." "Will you?" Kenneth leaned forward. "You're 17. No money. No family willing to take you in. What will you do? Live on the streets? Work minimum wage jobs for the rest of your life?" "I'll go to college." "With what money?" His voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "Robert controls your father's estate. Without his support, you have nothing. So I'll get loans, scholarships. Buried in debt before you even start your life. Is that really preferable to a comfortable home? Financial security? Someone to take care of you? You're 63 years old. 63 with excellent health and substantial wealth." Kenneth stood and walked toward her. Rosalie backed up instinctively. "I'm not asking you to love me, Rosalie. I'm offering you a partnership. You'd want for nothing. All I ask in return is companionship, someone to manage my household." And eventually, his eyes traveled down her body. Other wifely duties. Rosalie felt bile rise in her throat. "Get out." "Think about it," Kenneth said, unfazed. "Your uncle has given you until tomorrow evening. After that, you're on your own." He set the flowers on the coffee table. "I'll be waiting for your answer." After he left, Rosalie threw the flowers in the trash and scrubbed her hands until they were red. On the 7th day, at 4 p.m., Robert returned. This time, he brought a moving truck. "You've made your choice," he said, when Rosalie opened the door. "I gave you a perfectly reasonable option. You rejected it. Fine, but I'm done being patient." "Uncle Robert, please. The movers will be packing up the house over the next few days. You have until 6 p.m. to gather your personal belongings. Anything you leave behind becomes my property. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. His voice was ice. You're almost 18. You want to be independent? Here's your chance. I'll sue you. I'll find a lawyer. Robert laughed. With what money? Do it, Rosalie. Spend years in court trying to prove I did something wrong. Meanwhile, you'll be homeless and penniless. Is that really how you want to spend your youth? Rosalie looked past him to where Madison and Tyler stood by the moving truck. Madison? Her cousin finally met her eyes. For a moment, Rosalie saw conflict there. Pain, maybe even regret. Then Madison shook her head. I can't help you. I'm sorry. Tyler? You should have just married Kenneth, Tyler muttered. Would have made everything easier for everyone. Robert checked his watch. 6 p.m., Rosalie. 2 hours. At 5:53 p.m., Rosalie walked out of her childhood home with a single backpack. Inside, 3 changes of clothes, her mother's jewelry box, small enough that Robert probably didn't think it was valuable, a photo of her family in a frame she'd hidden under her jacket, and $43 in cash from a part-time job she'd worked before the accident. She stood on the sidewalk and watched movers carry furniture out of the house. Her father's favorite reading chair, her mother's bookshelf, the dining table where they'd eaten 1,000 meals together. All of it, being loaded into a truck to be sold or distributed or thrown away. Robert stood in the doorway, watching her with no expression at all. This is your last chance, he called out. Kenneth's offer is still open for the next 24 hours. Rosalie looked at her uncle, at this man who shared her father's DNA, but none of his kindness, and she made her choice. I hope my father's money was worth it, she said quietly. I hope it's worth knowing you stole from your own brother's child. Something flickered in Robert's eyes. Guilt, anger, but it passed quickly. I'm not the thief here, Rosalie. I'm the practical one. You'll understand that when you're older, if you survive long enough to get older. He went inside and closed the door. The lock clicked. Rosalie turned and walked toward the park at the end of the street, having no idea where she'd sleep that night. She was 17 years old, completely alone, and about to discover that losing your family wasn't the worst thing that could happen to you. What came next would test every ounce of strength she had. The streets would teach her lessons no school ever could, and a woman who seemed like salvation would turn out to be something far darker. But that's a story for another moment. For now, all you need to know is this. Rosalie Brennan was done being a victim. She just didn't know it yet. Stay tuned for part 2.